Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Business Barbershop podcast. I am Chris,
I am Keane.
and today we're going to talk about how to do a development deal or something like that. Keane's in charge, per usual. Before we get to that, if you like the show, share it with somebody. Like send up a smoke signal and let us know about it, or don't. Just keep listening. That'd be great. And thanks for listening. So, Keane.
Yeah.
Development deals.
Yeah. One thing I learned about getting into development is that so often the way you see the deal is very, very abstract and kind of loosey-goosey when you don't know how to run numbers. And so people, and this is totally indicative of how like agents will list a property. They'll say, oh, look, fourplex with unrestricted views of the sound and can rent or short-term rent or can scrape and build whatever, right? Your choice. It's like, yeah, maybe that's some good marketing for the purpose of how pretty it sounds, but to any developer who's ran numbers on the deal before, what happens is from the untrained eye, they would hear all that and say, what a cool property. Look, we can rent it. We can short-term rent it.
Optionality.
Right.
So many options.
But here's the thing. If you were going to do the last thing quoted, you would want nothing to do with the first part of it.
Right.
Case in point, there was a perfect property that just hit the market a couple hours today. Fourplex, downtown Kirkland. I think I can share the address. I think the address was like 8 10th Avenue South, Kirkland.
Okay.
So this is like right in downtown.
Uh-huh.
A little bit of views of the lake. And it says same thing. Long-term rent, short-term rent, views of the lake, could develop into something. I'm like, if we want to develop it into something, and you want to, like the 2.6 million you want for the property, which is justified as the fourplex is there, is not justified as a dirt cost.
Right.
You're never going to develop what you're saying the second half is going to be unless you scrape the structure.
Right.
So the first thing is this. Anything that could be sold on what you can do with the property that requires you to remove the existing structures means that if the thing is being priced because there's a structure there, then you would never want to buy it as a dirt deal because you're overpaying for the dirt. The exact same zoning and exact same lot with some shit box old house that's falling apart, that's the one you would want to buy because you're not paying a premium for the existing building there.
Right. Real quick.
Yes.
Define development deal. Are we talking about scraping and building something
Anything
new?
that you're going to build.
Okay.
Let's say, yeah, that's a good point because technically, like condoing an existing multifamily is a form of developing, right? So a development deal for the purpose of breaking ground and building something new.
Right. All right. So that's what I thought you meant. If you, but in your example, it would be great if you could just pay the dirt price, but you're going to have to pay for what's there.
That's correct. So So that's why the way for most agents who list these deals, they have no idea how to evaluate a land deal either. So that's why they kind of pitch it the wrong way. So here's a perfect example. My Juanita Drive property has a beat up Rambler, has a newer, nicer built ADU on it. Now in today's condition, it's a lot nicer because I've remodeled it all, right? The property was big enough to be subdivided. And so it was sold as, great investment property. You can rent both units, or you can subdivide and build some lots out of it, right? Classic example of like do this or do that, which you would say, yeah, but if there was is it worth it to scrape what's there? I bought the thing for $650, and that means I would have had to do a short plat subdivision and pay $370, those costs plus $375 a lot. To have two buildable lots, plus you'd have to remove trees, plus one of the houses would be right on the busy road, which would be heavily, devalued, which is why it didn't make a lot of sense that someone would do that. Mm-hmm. But what I ended up doing with it wasn't anything of what the listing agent said. So,
but shouldn't the agent put all that stuff in there anyway because they want to appeal to as many people as possible?
Sure, but they're not going to know how to do that because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Let's just be frank about it, right? So I'll give the example of what I did with the property, and it'll make a lot of sense.
Okay.
So the biggest hack that people miss on is what can you develop if you don't there's you can keep it the way it is, or you could scrape and build something new. What is overlooked sometimes is what if you kept what's there and still built something new? So that's exactly what I did with it. Okay, well, what's the Rambler worth as it is? Let's say I bought the whole thing for 650. If I turn it into condos, the existing ADU is worth about like 300 grand. This is back like 4 year ago pricing when I bought it, right? And then the Rambler was worth about like 550. So just by breaking those two up, it became worth 200 grand more than what I paid for it.
Right.
And the minute I turned to condos, the middle unit would lose maybe about 25, 30 grand if I cut off its backyard because there's a lot of land behind it. Not enough land to subdivide that, but enough land that I could build another ADU, and then which is exactly what I did. So I bought it for 650, and because I kept what was already there, I was able to make it worth a little bit more money by breaking up into legal, 3 units. In this case, as a condominium project, and still build a new unit in addition to that. So I made money on it before I even broke ground. So if you look at now, if you think about a general development deal, you're going to start with there's really 3 categories of costs: what you paid for the dirt, what they call soft costs, which is basically all the permitting stuff, engineering reports, survey, architectural design. Those are all the things that don't actually involve breaking ground and building. Hard costs is a construction cost. So it's land cost, soft cost, hard cost. All together equals the cost of, so if I bought land for 500 grand, I spent let's say I spent 100 grand in soft costs. I'm into it for like 600, and then I spend 900,000 building something. My total cost into it is 1.5 million, which you can also add in like financing. You might be getting a loan to do that. So maybe with financing, you into it for 1.7, and maybe when you're done, the whole thing's worth like 2.5. You sell it, and then you make a profit. So that's how margins work on land deals. It starts with land costs, soft costs, hard costs. So if you think about my scenario in that deal, by getting the property to be worth more before I even broke ground for an ADU, then the margin on my new ADU I built is literally 0 for the land. Now I only have soft costs and hard costs, and whatever it's going to sell for is going to be all profit. The only land cost I really paid is how much did it cut value out of the house for cutting off the backyard. But because in that deal, I broke it up, the front unit and middle unit, into condos, because it was worth more even after I cut off the backyard, right? Like when I chopped up into 2 units, the middle unit would have been worth about 560, 570 with the backyard. Yep. Instead, it was worth about 520, right? And then the front unit was worth like about 300. I paid 650 for all of it. Yep. Even though it cut 50 grand in value or so off the middle unit, the total value of the front 2 units, even with a smaller yard, still exceeded my purchase price. So technically, my dirt cost for my development was still 0.
Right.
Technically, I'm up before I even built.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then the margins of my build look great. That way, someone could look at it and be like, oh, well, look, you built an ADU on a busy road. You're going to have to sell it for less. Yeah, but my dirt cost was 0, and it's still Kirkland. Right. I could sell the thing for I'm not going to sell it for as little as like 750, but if I did, I'm still making a profit.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of my point. And there's no way it sells for that cheap.
Yeah.
So
how do you find it? How do you do this?
Yeah. So the first thing is understanding the land costs, soft costs, hard costs. And that's how you come up with your total cost of your development plus financing. And then what's the thing going to be worth? That's really the formula. So anyone who's going to evaluate these, that's what you're going to start with. That's the formula. Yep. Land costs, hard costs, soft costs, plus financing equals your total cost to build. And you need to have a large gap between all those things added together to what it's going to be worth at the end, especially if your goal is to sell, right?
How big of a gap? What are you looking for? Like
it better not be less than 25%.
Okay.
Right? And I want much more than that. And so, yeah, in this episode, I'm going to walk through how to get much better than 25% numbers in that. But you do have to look for kind of obscurities to look for those deals. Okay. So that Kirkland deal represents a version of how to do that.
Okay. Let's use that and let's do that.
Yep. So that one, because it already had an ADU, right?
Oh, your Kirkland one.
Yep.
What about this other Kirkland one that just came on the market? Does it not fit the mold?
No. It should just stay exactly what it is.
You just buy it as a fourplex.
You just buy it as a fourplex.
Maybe fix it up just a little bit.
Yep. And any marketing remarks about how you can develop it is a bunch of horse shit.
Yeah.
Fourplex
in Kirkland is the right price.
It's already in nice condition. It's got a little bit of views. Why would you want to tear that down? You can't go taller. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. Right.
Plus you can move into that bad boy.
Yeah.
If the
location
if it worked for you, then you only have to put like 5% down, right?
That is correct.
Because that new rules. Mm-hmm. You can live in one.
There's a max loan amount, but I have to look at what it is. But it's probably not worth the 2.6 it's listed for. It's probably more like 2.4, 2.5, and I'm pretty sure that with 5% down, it's pretty close to the loan
You
limit.
could squeeze in there somehow.
I have
Get
to
pretty
check.
close.
I have to check.
Yeah, but even if you had to, so I know we're getting off topic here, but I'm just curious. So let's say it's a scenario like that where the loan limit is exceeded. Would the buyer just have to bring that extra to the table, kind of, and maybe it comes 6 or 7% or something like that? Like,
Yeah, it depends how close it is to the max loan limit,
right.
though.
But you have to get the
It's a dollar for dollar difference.
Let's say it's $2 million.
Yeah.
Let's say it was $2 million though, was the max.
Right.
You put 5% down, then you'd have to bring the extra.
You just cover, yeah, you're
$400K or something to the table.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
If you want to get that 5%.
That's right.
And it may be worth. I guess it just depends on what the other options.
That one probably
are.
isn't the best example of that.
I guess it depends on what the other options are though for financing on what you might want to do, because maybe you could bring just 10% and do like some kind of a.
Maybe.
I don't know if you could.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could or could not, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, a veteran
There
could
might
do
be
it.
some other alternative financing solutions other than just this 5%.
Yeah, veterans could do it with no money down if they don't own any other property. So what is an ideal development? It actually represents a lot of the ADU construction deals we see in Seattle, a couple of the ones I've done in Kirkland, where if you can say, let me start with a building. I'm not paying a premium. I'm not paying a developer price for this. And what's already there will stay. And whatever land I cut off is going to cost it some of its value, right? And then you can build. So an example of that would be, like the first example I gave of my Juanita Drive one. That one is great, and people, oh my gosh, you have a buildable lot in Kirkland, and you got it for free.
Yeah.
Who cares where it's at?
Let me ask you this. I'm not gonna play devil's advocate, but I'm gonna ask you I'm gonna ask you the questions that are like against, not against it, but my first thought is, okay, you say like you don't want to pay developer prices. Are you able to find these types of opportunities just like on MLS?
Yeah, because what happens is in reverse. Remember how I mentioned how most of the time an agent would say, oh, you could subdivide the property, but like, yeah, but you'd have to scrape what's already there, and no one wants to pay the price of a house to get 2 lots and then scrape the house. That means you're paying, like, let's say for instance there's a house on a lot that's subdividable, but the house is sitting right where the property line would be. Well, if someone says, oh, it's subdividable, yeah, but no one wants a subdividable, like the subdividable lot doesn't mean anything unless the house is gone.
Right.
And if the house is gone, you're basically paying whatever price you're paying for the property, and then cut that in half, and that's the cost of each lot. But you're going to pay for the subdivision, and you're going to pay to scrape the house.
It would eat into your profit, basically.
It would. And so you're actually, and so if the things would sell for $700,000, because that's what a house in that area sells for, and lots in that area are worth less than $350, then why would you buy it as a subdividable lot to end up with 2 lots at $350 a piece plus the cost of scraping the house?
Right.
The subdividable feature means nothing if the house has got to go.
Right.
Now, same scenario, same house, but the house is pushed far forward on the lot, and you can subdivide it and not.
You have enough room, you could build another one without tearing.
And
it.
without disturbing the existing house. That is a way better deal, because now the house, when it loses some of its yard, if you bought for $700 and you subdivide it, maybe it drops down to like $625 because it has a smaller backyard. That means you basically paid $75,000 for the backyard lot. Or if you said, okay, let's look at like a true cost. I had to buy it for $700, I subdivided it, there's the cost of doing that. Selling it for $625, the selling cost of that. If you keep doing the math backwards, the reduced value plus the selling cost plus the soft cost to subdivide it, you might be into your backyard lot by $170,000. Well, at $170,000, that's still really cheap for the dirt.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you pull the utilities from the front house.
Yeah.
So the first tip I want to give to people who are thinking about getting into developing is try to look for stuff where you can build around what's there and not disturb what's there, and it doesn't affect the value of what's there that much.
Right.
That's the key. This is why ADU projects are so attractive to developers in the city of Seattle, because the city is already filled with a bunch of crap little houses on alley lots. Because, you know, if someone says, hey, like, how can you build another house on this lot? The lot's only 6,000 square feet. Well, if the existing house there is only 1,200, 1,400 square feet, and it's on a long, skinny alley lot, then it's like, okay, well, if the house is on the front side of that lot and there's a lot of room behind it you can access from the alley, then if you build a backyard cottage and condo it, someone can access it through the alley and it feels like a separate house. Right? Or even better, if it's on a corner lot, now it's facing the street, even better. Right?
What this is totally random. With these townhouses that you were just talking about, would it be viable or possible to buy condo, sell off like one or two of them and keep the rest?
Sure. 100%. If you're a developer who's developing, that's where you get the power. Like, remember we talked about like the Burfer method, how to make it work in a high value market. That's where you turn the high value market on its head, because yes, buying it for retail and then trying to rent it, especially with high rates, doesn't work.
Right.
But if you bought it and you're able to dump off parts of it, and now you're able to get all the money you put into it back into your bank, and still very little on the retained unit because you didn't have to cash out so much money. Right. Then it works. Like technically, like the last deal I just bought, I paid $2.4 for all of it. It was 4 buildings. If I wanted to operate on a very low leverage basis, I could just buy it, chop it up, sell 3 of them, and the 4th one I could own and have no loan on it.
How does that work with the loan? So like, let's say you buy the 4-plex, right? It's under a note. Then you condo it out and you sell one off. How does that affect the?
Yeah, if it's a traditional loan
or something, and like you have to roll
maybe
it into something
if
different?
This is where developer financing is so crucial. It's one of the reasons why my investors and developers, when I walk them through the business plans, they ask the exact same questions, right? How do you make it easy to finance that stuff?
Yeah.
There are developer loans that are designed to do partial lien releases. They understand what you're doing.
Oh, got it.
And so then when you sell off a unit, they're okay with not taking the entire balance. They'll do a partial lien release. But traditional long-term loans don't have that feature.
Like you bake that into the terms of the loan.
That's why when I help people business plan their developments, sometimes, but those loans can have higher costs to them.
Right.
So like people say, okay, great, those terms sound great. Should we buy it under that? And usually, depending on what it is, every project's different. But let's say you're going to do a development deal like that, but it's going to take some time before you get there. We might buy on a regular rental loan because it might take time before you get to the resale process. Right. Refinance that to a developer loan that does partial lien releases. That way you're only paying for the expensive one right before they start to sell off.
Yeah. You could also, I don't know if that would make a difference. You wouldn't necessarily, maybe you could also could you just pull cash out? If you bought all 4, condoed it, now they all have their own sort of individual value, which is probably going to be higher than.
Yeah, you would only condo if it was going to be higher
than the original price.
That's right.
And then you could always just maybe refi it at that time.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah. Yeah. So an example, like my friend Kirsten, she just bought a duplex I recommended for her in Gig Harbor. She paid $600 for it, and by doing some remodel work and condoing, each one's going to be worth about $450.
Right.
So when she's done with that, she can refinance them as 2 separate condos, pay off the senior debt. She can cash out and pay herself all the money she put back into it because it's now worth more.
Right.
And then when she does go to sell them later on, each one has their own individual loan. Yeah. So then when you sell it, that loan will get paid off, and the rest of the proceeds you'll get as sale proceeds.
Yeah.
That's right.
So there's a couple different ways to do something.
Everyone's navigated a little bit differently. So when I see the project, I'll come up with different financing options for them. When people,
it just depends on what you want to do, what your timeline is like, probably, and just the specifics of that individual property.
Yep. And so now that I give the example, right, the most ideal way, what could those deals look like in today's market? Well, with our state's new upzone, right, one of the asset classes that I think that's getting overlooked, the Seattle ADU stuff is great. You lose a little value of the main house after putting a little remodel into it. You get your dirt cost for reduced cost, and then you have your build cost and you have your margin. But there are deals that are being overlooked at the moment, which I understand why, because the bills just passed and the zoning is just changing. But there are already existing multifamilies that, if you were to break them up, turn them into condos, are worth more. Is it enough to flip them? No. But what if the lot was big enough that you could add more to it and it's worth more? Then they look a lot like my Kirkland deal.
Right.
Let's suppose you have a big side-by-side duplex with a huge backyard, which, by the way, I had one of these. Now, we just condoed it and sold it before any of these changes happened. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at all the neighbor units. I'm like, aha, you guys would be great development deals. So these duplexes usually sell for between like $850 and $900,000. If you condo them and remodel them, each one's worth about like $600. Now, mine, I bought it for $380 because it was in total shit condition.
Yeah.
Right. So we had to put hundreds and hundreds of thousands into it. But still, 380 plus remodel costs, and then we sold each one for like 660. We crushed it, right?
Yep.
But was it worth it to do that with the other ones in better conditions, buying them at 850 to 9? And the answer was no. Not if you're just reselling those existing 2 units as a condo.
Right.
But with the new zoning changes, if the lot was big enough, which those ones are, you can build another couple units in the backyard. So my units that sold for 660, what would they be worth if we just cut down the backyard so they're a lot smaller? Probably closer to 600. Okay. You could have had 2 opposing units kind of turned away from it, so they both had, like, the backyard was basically just cut down substantially, and have 2 other units facing the other direction, and build another side-by-side duplex. With the new zoning changes, that would be allowed. So now if you think about it, okay, let's say you bought that duplex for 900. You remodeled it. Let's say you put 100 grand worth of lipstick on the pig stuff, and then condoed it. So now you're into the whole thing for around $1 million.
Yep.
And it's worth maybe 1.2, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the 1.2, that 1.2 doesn't sound like it was worth it, except for that 1.2 is as if those units don't have a backyard either.
Right.
So if I bought that duplex, condoed it, and then refinanced it as 2 condos, I now have all the backyard to develop the exact same thing, and the same thing applies. I didn't pay for my dirt. So in some scenarios, you if you're buying, like the Seattle ADU deals, if you're going to buy the house, cut off the backyard, you're still paying something for the dirt because there was some kind of reduced value from the house being condoed and losing its backyard. But the duplex that gets converted to condos, even if it loses its backyard, still might be worth more because you just converted it to 2 condos from a regular duplex.
Right.
So there are deals out there where you can still come into your dirt cost for free with a high resale price. But you have to have the eye for it, and you have to, as a developer, you have to have the imagination of what you can build, and that's one of the keys of really being a developer. But the key to it is that if you're going to dip your toe into space and you want to play developer, most people who want to get in developer start looking for cheap land deals. They'll see them on the market, and they try to figure out how to develop this lot that they see for sale for 150 to 300 grand.
Right.
And the answer is, if it's sitting on the market for 150 to 300 grand, there's some shit wrong with it.
Right.
That's number one. And then number two, even if you do know how to develop it and you have the knowledge of doing things like what I'm seeing, you would never buy that because there's always hacks to get your dirt for cheaper, but you have to chop it off of something that's already there. And no, the listings usually will not advertise that that's what that property is. You have to have had the knowledge coming into it. So you're looking for it. So when it hits the market, you're looking for it.
Right.
That's the key. That's the key.
Right. You have to know the lot size. You have to know what's buildable.
It also eliminates a lot of your risk because if you can have the imagination and creativity to find deals where you can chop off the land and push value up without disturbing the existing structures, what happens if your feasibility failed? What happens if, like, 150 feet away there's a creek that you didn't take consideration, and there's like a 250 foot setback because there's fish in that creek? So even though you're not disturbing it by building, they say you can't build anything because we want you to have a 250 foot setback.
Yeah.
What happens if you buy that property with my business plan and it doesn't work? It just became a normal buy and hold, and you didn't pay a premium for the property.
Right.
If you bought like a duplex, well, you bought it for the market value. You didn't pay any extra for the dirt. So what's your worst case? Well, like any good piece of real estate, if you hold it long enough, you're going to make money on it anyways.
Yeah, and you have a little bit of room baked in there just from doing the conversion.
If you bought pure raw land and you had that same problem,
then you're fucked.
Then you're fucked. Yeah. I don't care if you paid 150 grand for it. If it was that cheap, that was 150 grand wasted. Right? Like, what's it worth? Maybe the neighbor next door would buy it for 75 grand just to make their backyard bigger.
Right.
That's really like what becomes its value when it's not buildable.
Yeah.
So this method of, don't disturb the existing structure and add more to it is definitely the way I recommend most new developers enter the space. And if you don't have creativity, copy other people's ADU floor plans that people are doing in places like the city of Seattle. But being creative and creating an option that the market needs but doesn't exist is always where developers make the most money. They have the vision for it, And so I see opportunities like that all the time. People just have to act on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I can't tie up my money in every property I see go for sale. Like, here's a really good example. I saw a property in Everett sell last year for 500 grand. Great example for this. It was something that if you condoed it, you wouldn't want to turn this duplex into multiple condos. It looked like an old house that kind of rented like a duplex, but you also could have just called it an old house with a mother-in-law apartment. It looks like that style.
Wasn't like 2 side-by-side houses with a shared wall.
Nope, just looks like some old house in Everett. And that thing sold for 500 grand. And if you cut off the backyard and resold it as a duplex style property. It doesn't really lose any value without the yard because it still generates the same income.
Yeah.
So on a flat corner lot with an alley, plenty of room to build a backyard cottage. A backyard cottage in Everett would maybe cost you like $175,000. That to some people who build 80s in Seattle, they're like, that number sounds ridiculously low. Hey, you got to build for the neighborhood. The shit we're building in Seattle, that's not what you build in Everett.
Right.
You need to build a 700 square foot shit box with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath because that's what the old houses in Everett look like, right? And it just ends up being a new construction version of the same thing. And those things will sell for like $475,000, and that will literally cost you about $175,000 to build.
Yeah.
Even after tax, like you're with utilities maybe you're hitting like $200,000, but there's margin in it.
Right.
You just got to build for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I used to agree with those in-city developers that I can't make ADU projects work in Tacoma and Everett. And my recent aha was quit trying to build the same shit in Seattle that works in those cities. Yeah. That's not what people need.
Give the people what they want.
Yeah, and they want tiny little cheap shit.
They want something that's affordable for the
affordability matters more than features
for the area.
Yep.
Yeah, they want to have a house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if the comps say they'll pay that much for a resale with a larger yard and a garage, they'll easily pay that for a smaller yard and no garage but new construction because the comps that we're comparing to are 100 years old.
Right.
Even if they're remodeled, a remodeled old house still doesn't mean it's going to be the same as brand new.
Yeah.
Everything is code, right? Updated plumbing, updated electrical,
everything
energy
works.
efficient. Yeah. Yeah, because I can remodel an old house and make it feel like it's kind of new, but it's still an old house.
Yeah.
We're not replacing all those working systems. We're not replumbing the whole thing. Right. So you're still always just piecemealing it together to make it more modern so it can work.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that thing sold for $500,000, and if you got the permits a year later today, it would probably worth even more without the yard. It'd probably sell for $525,000 to $550,000 without the yard. So by the time you're getting ready to build your backyard cottage, you're really almost zero dirt cost. You build that little house for $200,000, all in, and it's worth $425,000 to $475,000, and you dump it. Then you can choose: do I sell all of it, make a couple $100,000? Do I sell it, pay back my down payment and development costs, and keep the other unit with more equity in it, and the equity that's in it is more or less free? Right. You sell the original asset, for more money and even less on the new construction one. You kind of like 3 exit strategies. Sell them all. I mean, you could try to keep them all, but in today's higher rate market, it doesn't really pencil well. Yeah. I think that what would happen is you would have the option of sell one, keep one, sell the other, keep the other, or sell all of them. But if all 3 of those are profitable, that's the sign of a good development project. A good development project very often will have multiple exit strategies to make it work.
Right.
Because that means the margins are good. Yeah. There's enough margin to have to think about all the different options. And so that's a sign of a good developer deal. And so, but I would challenge that people who are thinking about developing to not only start with projects like that, but probably stick with projects like that. Because, the more and more I've looked at them, the more I think for a developer to be okay buying a large property and scraping, you need a lot of capital. And are you really making that much more that you can't just bat a bunch of singles like what I just talked about and make the same or better margins? There are definitely deals that have a lot of money in them that you can just scrape what's there, develop the land, and build. But those are pretty extensive land development deals.
Yep.
And in city, those are pretty hard to find. They're not impossible. I've seen some unicorn lots that whenever they finally sell will be great development properties. There's one in Forbes Creek and there's one in Magnolia in Seattle. Gigantic.
You know what's funny?
What's that?
Moses just sent me this.
Oh, did
house.
He? Yeah, that's the one.
I know.
That's the one.
No, he literally just texted me.
Yeah.
Just right now.
That's it.
That's so funny.
That's it. I even thought, what would that fourplex? We're talking about the Kirkland fourplex. I said that's on the market. I even said, what would that thing be as condos? I think we'd have to look at comps, but they could, if they're done really nicely, could maybe be worth, $700-800 a piece, but still not a lot more than 2.6. And you'd have to remodel them, so I don't think that's worth it either.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
If
you said
they
okay,
are, though, they're right on the water, right?
Pretty close.
Oh, they're not. They're set back.
Yeah, they're set back, and the
right
buildings
here.
in front of it do block part of the view.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's but and I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought that was super funny that he just literally texted me that.
It's a world-class asset that you can do nothing else extra to it to make it better other than just fix it up to be a little bit nicer. Like, what's the highest best use of that? The city of Kirkland doesn't have restrictions for short-term renting multifamily zones. So the highest best use is to operate like a boutique hotel. Yeah. Because you'll get more rents than you would a regular rental. Yeah. And that's the only area that short-term rentals illustrate substantially higher income than you do in the rest of Kirkland.
Yep. but the math is harder
Yeah, like
right now because
let me give you an
interest
example.
rates and stuff like that.
I
The math
bought
is hard.
I bought a little shitbox detached condo in North Kirkland, or not even North Kirkland, just north of there, north of downtown Kirkland, but still in 98033, just north of that area.
Mm-hmm.
I bought the thing for $460. I have to do a pretty extensive remodel, but when I'm done with it, it'll be worth like mid sixes, and it rents like a duplex. The rent I'll get for each one of those will be 75% the rent that those would get. So those get a premium, but only about 25%. Well, 25% premium means that like if I were to have maybe 3 condos in my community, I would get the same rent. That would be a acquisition price of about like 1.4. That thing's 2.6. Right. So if I'm looking at on a cash flow play with the exact same purpose, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You'd want to, just because there's no question that in terms of appreciation, that would appreciate better than the stuff I'm telling you I have north of there, because mines are like in a woodsy area and the site looks a little run down.
Yep.
But there's just a ceiling to how much people are going to pay for that short-term rental.
Yes. Yep. And it's yeah. Because you're not it is in a good area though.
It's a super good area, and they will pay the premium
because it's walkable right there.
Oh yeah.
That's a legit spot.
Yeah. And it's a little bit of unproven market. Like, could I possibly get even more than what mines represent? Yes, it's possible, but the air DNA numbers don't project it, so you'd be rolling the dice on it. Right. Great for someone who's just got the capital, who doesn't mind parking it into like a really great asset and then testing the theory on the cash flow, but knowing that even if it doesn't cash flow great, it's still gonna have appreciation just because of the location.
Yep.
Right. You can't justify 2.5 based off of the income projections.
Right.
In any way possible.
Right.
There's just better things to buy if that's what you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah.
But what a great asset to own, especially if you are a rich person who wants the house hack. You can make your unit live like a really nice condo, even though you didn't condo it, and then live in downtown Kirkland, and still get rents of the other 3. Yeah. And if you did Airbnb them, that means if you had friends that were coming in town, you could block out a weekend and let them stay right next door. It has lots of cool options, but the options point to like definitely the blend of investor / personal use.
Correct.
Yeah. There's none of them as an investor make a ton of sense on a cash flow basis.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
If you want to live in downtown Kirkland at a reduced cost, right? That could maybe make sense,
Yeah. I would do that.
Yeah.
If I didn't have any kids.
Yeah.
If we didn't need 5 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We need this whole place.
Yeah. If you had that whole place, it would become a house.
We need this whole place for our family.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about it, that might be its highest best use, is to take that parking spot underneath, turn that to a garage.
Yeah.
Maybe even turn part of it to living space, which they would be okay with if it was a 1 unit. So if you literally just took down the walls and repurposed it as like a modern house and added garages down below, the architecture looks like it could support it. Maybe put a rooftop deck on the top.
That's funny because it would also be that would be probably a pretty good buy.
Yeah.
You're like not if you're going to live in it, like not for business, like not for an investment necessarily, but to buy if there was a house right there.
Yeah. Hey, actually, you might be onto something. Maybe the highest best use of that is
it would be at least 2.5
as a house.
Right. It's that location.
Yeah, I think more than if you did it up so it looked nice, I think you're pushing more like 3.5.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because it's a big as a single unit, as a one piece, it's big.
Yep.
You got parking under. You have
the parking underneath is excessive for a house. So what happens is, as a fourplex, you cannot close off. So I thought about that. There's a parking spot underneath the structure, right?
The whole thing underneath.
Almost all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That much parking is only necessary if it retains being this 4 unit. If you repurposed it as a house, maybe even left 1 living space in there as an ADU, because in the city you don't have to have extra parking for the first ADU. So let's say you made it live like a duplex, where it really was a big house with a mother-in-law apartment in it. Then the city should let you close off that parking area below. Yeah. And turn that to like a garage and maybe make some of it living space. Because I think it's 2,600 square feet, right?
It's I will tell you in a minute. Yeah, it's got some. Oh yeah, so it's sort of got like 4 parking spaces, and then it's got like 4 sort of little storage.
Yeah.
closet areas in the back.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
those might be the stair accesses that go upstairs.
It could be.
Right.
It could be too. Yep.
And so if you repurpose that to be like a garage, like a 3-car garage plus to be a 3-car garage and then partial below grade living square feet and only one staircase that went up, right? Then you probably push your overall square feet up to like 33 to 35.
It's 23,000 right now, basically 2976.
Yep. Yep. So then it would look more like a regular house. That's probably its highest best use is just to be converted to a house.
Yeah.
You could live in it like a multifamily, convert it to a house, and then it ends up being worth more down the road.
Plus, you have a double deck.
Yeah.
You know, on your house.
Yeah. Just leave that like the way it is.
Each bed, you could have
do like living space and a bedroom, guest bedroom on the first one.
Right. You could have
kitchen.
you could potentially have 3 bedrooms with decks out there. You know, I mean.
Yeah, and then upstairs could be like a master. It could be like a
something.
master suite plus 2 other bedrooms and a bath upstairs.
Yeah, that place would be sick.
Yeah.
I would do that.
But sometimes the highest best use is to do that is to actually reduce your density. I think you're right. I think that's probably the best play for that one. You know, so if anyone wants the house hack of 4-plex and later on turn it to a house.
How often do you talk about going from 4 to 1 though? Not very often.
Not very often, but in a location like that, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that obviously I live in Kirkland. That is a great location because you're across the street and it's that whole walkable.
Yep.
Downtown is right there. You can walk to downtown super easy.
Yep.
That's a really good spot.
Yep. Well, I talked to so tell who texted you about it?
Moses.
Tell Moses that if he wants to house hack a multifamily and convert it to a house later on and make it worth 15-20% more for very little work, that's a pretty good play.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to find lots in that area.
For sure.
If you do it right and you put like a rooftop deck so the view's even better off the top.
If you put a rooftop deck on there, that would be sick.
But the thing is that the structure's already there. I think you just have to engineer it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with this whole business plan that we're talking about is like what would be the biggest thing I would watch out for in that property with that use is how tall the ceilings are.
Right.
A lot of those multifamilies, the ceilings are kind of short.
Yeah.
And so then if you said, okay, let's say it's a little bit on the short side, then you're talking about, okay, well, as a house, that starts to put a ceiling on how much it's worth unless you raise the ceiling height. And if you raise the ceiling height, now your cost is going to go up.
Right.
Yeah. So if that had tall ceilings, I would definitely say someone who wants to like buy a multifamily and then tiptoe their way into like a really nice SFR just with a remodel. It's because it's so much easier to do a remodel within the footprint of a structure than it is to add to the structure.
Yeah,
it's actually easier to go up than it is to go out. Once you go out, you change the footprint, drainage plans, impervious surface, all that other stuff starts to come in.
And here you already have, ample plumbing. You have ample, everything is
plumbing,
there.
electrical,
Everything is there that
the
you
footprint. The building's already maximizing the site.
Yeah, because there's plumbing run to every unit.
Yeah.
So like you have bathrooms and kitchens.
You can run them. You can design it so there's a master suite in every bedroom, and it probably wouldn't be that expensive because there's already so much plumbing running around.
Yeah.
There's already 4 bathrooms, 1 for each unit, plus 4 kitchens.
Yeah.
So if you just reduced it to 1 big kitchen and then like 4 bedrooms, you can probably put an ensuite in every single one of them.
Yeah.
Which I actually, I went to my friend Bill's house in New Canaan, Connecticut, which is an area near like Greenwich, where all like the hedge fund people live over there in New York. And it's crazy because he lives in this neighborhood in this whole area where everything is like estate properties. Everything is on acreage, right? And so his house is not at all abnormal for the area, but the place is 11,000 square feet.
The house?
The house.
Jesus.
And a 2,500 square foot guest suite by the pool. And like if you drive down that private street to that house, all the houses look like that. And then the neighborhood across the street looks like that. And then there's like miles of neighborhoods like that. Like that's what the whole area looks like.
That's insane.
What's crazy is too, he bought that thing. Let me think back. It was before COVID, and he paid less than $3 million for it. Today it's probably worth like $5 million, which don't get me wrong, that's a good amount of money, 4 or 5. But if you think about like what 4 or 5 million buys you like in West Bellevue, it's like 5,000 square feet on a 15,000 square foot lot.
Right.
Nice house.
Yeah.
His is 11,000 square feet, acreage with a pool and a guest pool house on it, and there's an ensuite in every bedroom.
Yeah.
So when you get houses that big, they don't share bathrooms.
Right.
If anything, those are the house sizes where you always have more bathrooms than you have bedrooms because there's a bathroom for every bedroom. That's how you use that space.
Yes.
Then you still have to have the guest baths so that way you don't have to run across 5,000 square feet to go to the bathroom.
Right.
So you need to have these en suites every, couple, 50, 70 feet. and also because you might be hosting a party of like 50 people because
Right.
your house can actually fit it proper. You need to have enough bathrooms that there's not a line.
Just people can go to.
Yeah.
What does he use it for? Why did he buy it?
You
He just wanted it.
just want a nice house. His timing was good too.
So big though. It's like
It was a good sized family.
11,000 square feet. He would need like a family of 20.
Yeah, he ain't that. It's hilarious because I've stayed there. When I visited him, I stayed there. And I don't know if he's okay with me sharing this, but I'm just going to share it. I remember that there's this Amazon truck doing a delivery, and he has like one of those like kind of like drive-through kind of, I don't know what they call it, but it's like an overhead thing where the building goes over it and you could drive underneath it, like a tunnel almost, to get to the back of the driveway. And these Amazon trucks are too tall to clear it. But they always try to drive underneath it to do a turnaround. Even though there's room to do a turnaround, they just do it to try to make it easier to do a turnaround. And whenever they do it, they kind of hit the ceiling of the kind of rafter parts. And so I remember like they did it, which it clearly sounded like when his wife Stephanie was yelling, "Hey Bill, they did it again. He ran into whatever."
Yeah.
At the moment she's yelling it, and he's trying to catch them, right? Which if they just did like a hit and run and ran. But he got pictures of the driver license plate when this happened. So of course it's been like repeating problem. First world problems.
Seriously.
But what's hilarious is the first like 2 to 3 minutes that she was trying to yell and catch him, he couldn't hear her.
Right.
Because she was in some different part of the house, and they're not on walkie-talkies.
Right.
And so you're in a house so big that you can yell at the top of your lungs and the other people can't hear you if they're in a different part of their house.
That's wild.
Yeah.
See, I like to have houses that are like kind of tiny. So you have to hang out together. Like if you're going to be on like a family vacation.
Yeah.
And tell everybody you cannot hang out in your bedrooms. You got to hang out in the common
Almost
areas.
like a dorm, right?
Yeah.
Where they have like lots of bedrooms. Like it can be 10 bedrooms, but one commune space.
Yeah.
One big open living room, kitchen.
Yeah.
You can hang out in your bedroom if you want, but there's no other.
Like you could sneak off a little bit, but the idea is you got to bump into each other a little bit.
100%. Especially like any form of getting food, you're going to the commune.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. There's a really cool Airbnb that we stayed in Miami that was that way. Like it was just basically like a U shape, and in the middle was like the living and kitchen, and then in the middle of the U was the pool.
Mm-hmm.
So the bedrooms are all on the edges of the U, so you can go hang out and sleep and whatever. But then when it was time to like eat or hang out, everyone was coming into the middle.
Yeah.
Congregate in the middle of the house or outside at the pool area, which you can see, which was a direct like, outdoor to that same area.
Yeah.
So when I saw that layout, I was like, oh, that's cool. I kind of want a house just like that in a sunny place. That's perfect.
Yeah.
It's big, but it's not crazy big, but
Right.
it feels really spacious because, there isn't a ton of rooms. It was like 4 or 5 bedrooms and like 3 or 4 bathrooms, and then just one big family area, one big kitchen, one big outdoor area that's directly off the living room.
Right.
And it's like, just that. Everyone had to pretty much hang out in the same area.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, me too. I like little houses in general. I mean, I got a lot of that shit in my portfolio. But yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to talk to people about. Especially in the state of Washington with the new bills that we talked about and all the episodes we talked about, HB 1110 and 1337, people are going to be looking at properties trying to figure out what to do with that.
Yeah.
And people will waste hours and days and weeks or months, or they'll just get confused and do nothing, which is what a lot of people do when they first think about developing.
Yep.
And the answer is buy something where you didn't pay a premium for the dirt and figure out how to add more onto it where it doesn't impact the value of the main structure that much. And everything you get out of the build is almost all upside margin. Right. And there's examples of that.
Yeah. You really kind of want it to be like as as little capital as possible.
Yeah, because you could buy it then. Because think about it. Because people are like, oh, how much do I have to buy this land for $300,000 and then build some $1 million structure on it? Like they try to get into the low point of entry by trying to buy cheap dirt, and that's the backwards way of doing it. You can buy things as a rental property with a smaller down payment, 20, 25, 30% down, and the price point might be higher, but they'll land deals, they're going to require you to put more down on that, 40, 50%, and you're going to have to. It's worth nothing until you get it to until you get it either permit approved is the first point where it's worth more, or you can finish it and complete it. So if you're buying it for what it is and you can add more onto it, then, ideally, if it's in a decent location, it's going up in value while you're trying to develop it.
Yeah.
And then once you're done, the existing structure doesn't lose much value. And that really, to me, makes the most sense.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's enough of that out there,
Yeah. Yep, I like it. All right, I have a this can be like an Easter egg part of this episode.
Okay.
So if people make it this far,
Okay.
there's something else we can talk about. I think we've talked about this every time this happens to me, but I'm curious about your view on this. So I had one of my attorneys put his notice in.
Okay.
It's really kind of out of the blue. Whenever this happens, I always think to myself like, it's very hard, I've found, to keep people around for a long time. I don't know if that's just like the state of the union, you know,
Well,
like in some ways.
there's probably an average turnover rate time frame for the industry and profession. So I think the first thing is you want to find out what the metrics are for that profession in general, national, and then see if you can break it down to even local, to see if you're outside of the norm. That's the first thing, is because as a boss, you hear that, you're like, oh, what am I doing wrong as a boss? There's always so much turnover. Some jobs are just designed for it, right?
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't think that staff attorneys would necessarily be one of those.
Well,
But
it's tricky because I think, well, it's everything is a guess. He's not even leaving to go take another job. He's like taking a break or something. But and I've had that happen before. But it's interesting because like our jobs are not that stressful, you know, like we're not overworked.
Well, what sometimes is stressful is a different form of stress. Have you seen the list of what people want the most out of their profession? It's not pay.
Right.
They want to like who they work for and work with,
Yep.
and feel like their work has purpose.
Yeah.
Those two things rank higher than pay.
I know.
Oh, and opportunity for growth. Opportunity for growth.
Well, I think that I think the third one for me is interesting as I think it's maybe similar for you as well. So like the first two, I would think that we have. So my team is great. Like all cool people, everybody gets along. It's like a good working environment.
Mm-hmm.
What was the second one?
Opportunity for growth is a
No,
big
that
one.
was the third one. That was the third
third one I
What was
mentioned,
the
but
second
that one ranks high on the list. I just mentioned.
What was the
last.
second? What was the second
They
one?
want to
though?
like who they work for. They want their work to have purpose.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, and purpose. Estate planning, I think, is actually pretty purpose driven. Same with probate, because people are happy when you're done. Like you're doing good for people. You know?
Whether or not, yes, but sometimes the good you're doing doesn't align with how it feels. This is one of the reasons why I talk to people about like value add real estate. I say almost every version of like hacking a property to get more income out of it. If you get like there's like, let's say we talk about a house. You can room rent it. You can rent the whole thing to one family. You could Airbnb it, or you can maybe turn it to like an adult family home.
Yeah.
Right. All those are or midterm rents. So it's like there's all these different versions you can rent it. Right. So when I talk to someone and say, look, if you want to do more than the regular rent, if you want to explore adult family homes, midterm rents, short-term rents, rooming houses, I would recommend that you do one that speaks to you a little bit. It's like my friends Christian and Shannon, they've done rooming houses, but Christian started off in a rooming house, right? And so there's a part of him that really, connects with the need of a rooming house,
right,
because he actually started off in one. And then there was this part where the manager asked him to help manage it for like reduced rent, and he thought it was great. He just showed the units and helped rent it, and it made his rent cheaper, and basically backwards taught him how to manage the thing.
Yeah.
Right. And understanding that market, understanding where it's needed, understanding the value it gives, and having lived that value,
right,
he can be connected with giving that value to
He's
other
a soft
people.
spot for it, so it's something that resonates with him.
100%. I've never lived in a rooming house, so it always sounds odd to me.
It would be like if when you were a kid, your parents died and like they had a trust, or they did not in some ways, and like that really affected you the trajectory of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you have that here. Okay. Let me get to this opportunity for growth part though.
Okay.
Because I'm curious about how you handle that here. Let's say you have and maybe you can step up from like a underwriter to like a loan officer. I don't know what all the different positions are.
I've seen that happen before, but that is really rare.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say like just say you're an underwriter.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, where do you go? Like what like where
In the
is
operations in the mortgage world, that's probably not the best example because it's more like you could be like a front desk person who becomes an assistant processor, who becomes a processor, who becomes an underwriter, right?
but when you're at the underwriter, you're at the top. It's like
Right.
being an attorney.
Right.
Like where do you go? Is the growth just getting better?
I
Is
think,
see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
that's not the best example because you're never going to open your own mortgage practice
Right.
with a underwriter background. You have some knowledge, but you're just the sales skills, the build, right? It would be more like you're an assistant loan rep, maybe assistant processor, became an assistant to the loan officer, helping put pre-apps together. Now you're talking to clients and you're actually selling the loan terms. Now you're in a position where you get a base plus bonus, and then you can maybe make commission on your own deals. And then you start to feel like, okay, now I want to go on my own and be my own loan officer. That's the opportunity for growth, right? Or if like on John's team, one of his buyer's agents wants to start their own team,
Right.
right?
But he would break off the John. They would break away from John completely.
That's correct. Or if you can give them opportunity for growth without that. So how do you tackle that? Well, I remember I mentioned how some positions were just almost designed for turnover. He's done a really good job of minimizing it, but the industry average, when I've talked to agents who hire buyers agents and listing agents to go on their team, the turnover rate is really high. That's very normal.
Right.
People
just tend to kind of jump teams or something, right?
Yeah, or just leave to go on their own. That's just
Yeah.
a normal part of that space. He
Right.
does a good job of giving value where people stay longer than they typically do. But I talked to all the different agents who have built out buyers agents on their team. There's always been rotation, even the most stable, sophisticated ones. If you can keep a buyer's agent in your team that does a really good job and is really good at selling and whatever for more than 2.5 years, you're really doing well.
Got it.
That's just normal.
And maybe that's what it is here. Maybe there just is going to be some.
It could be. It depends if they're drawn by the idea of opening their own practice, because that's basically the equivalent, of going on your own. The difference
and I don't
is
know.
that, the difference is that in a broker world, it's so much easier to do it because you can just hang your license somewhere, even work in an office, and not have that kind of overhead. For an attorney to go on their own, they're probably going to sign a lease. They might do like some kind of executive office suite, like those Regis centers, to minimize the rent cost without a long-term lease, just to dip their toe into the space.
Yeah.
But it's still more overhead than it is hanging your license at existing brokerage.
Yeah. It's not super capital intensive. The hard part's finding clients, though. Like that's the hard part.
Right.
Because you're not, even in my office, there are no expectations for anyone to generate business except for me.
Right.
They don't have to network. They can.
Right.
And if they're interested.
I actually think that job has more stickiness than like a buyer's agent would be on an agent team, because those guys are 100% commission, and all they could see is that if they were on their own, they would make more money. And yes, they might be getting fed leads, but if they start closing enough business that came from their own database, and they'd say, I can give up this part of the business, make up, the minute they say I can make the same amount of money doing less work just by making a bigger split on my own deals, they're already starting to think about going.
I think that may have.
That's a bigger deal in the real estate world.
I think it may have been a factor though in this play. There's a weird transition at this time from me doing attorney stuff to me stopping doing attorney stuff.
Right.
And I think in some ways,
I mean, I could tell you how it's perceived to happen in that space outside of that industry. It seems like the way you keep your best attorneys with that stickiness of being an entrepreneur is by making them partners. That seems to be kind of like the thing.
But they have a rev split. They basically get the upside without the downside. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's a space where people care a lot about prestige.
You're right. You're 100%
sometimes
right.
titles make people happy.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, sometimes I give someone a title and all they did is take away their overtime because now they're a manager and their salary. But for some people, that pride makes them really happy.
Yeah.
That happens in retail, by the way. If you're the best commission salesperson and you go to being a sales manager, you could have the possibility of making more if you actually repeat your sales plus take the salary. But because you're spending so much time managing,
you have more stuff to do. Yeah.
Then you often lose some of those sales upside, and then you get paid nothing extra for staying during like inventory days.
Right.
And your salary position doesn't allow you to get overtime for it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. He didn't. I mean, he didn't give me any information or really tell me, what was going on. It could have been something just completely different. But anytime anyone leaves and I'm not firing them, I'm always wondering like, why?
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of being a good boss. You should know why, right? You should learn. And
well, I think the worst thing is not knowing. But it would be easy if I could just pick out the thing like, they didn't like this thing about the way that we did things, and that's just the way that we do them, and not a good fit or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes that happens. It happens the other way too.
Mm-hmm.
For them not being a fit for us. But yeah, it's always just like, I wonder what's going on there. You know. But I think the thing is too I think it's also has something to do with the experience level that I hire at is a little bit lower experience. I think those people are just a little bit more transitory. I
They
don't know.
are, and here's the other thing. What I've also learned, because I've hired newer people in my industry too, and I've actually had people come and go and complain about how we operate. And I'm like, what I built as a machine, when I was a top producer, what I built, if I were to be plugged into this as a machine, I would just crush it.
Yeah.
But if you're not a top producer, why would you appreciate it?
Yeah.
Why would you appreciate, all these nuances of what's built for a top producer? If you're not that, it just,
Yeah.
like you said, it doesn't work well,
Yeah.
right? If a grill was designed to be cooking beef ribs on it, you keep burning your seafood on it. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that's not what this was made for.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that's just, sometimes it's just not a good fit. I know my branch specifically is not a good fit for a lot of LOs. Like I had a friend who was just asking, she's like, off the record, right? What would it be like working there? And I just told her, I said, look, like you could be semi-interested in the investor stuff that we're doing here, and you're still not a good fit. Like everyone here, if you're not actively selling those kind of loans, you're still that what we're doing here is valuable enough because you're using it for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Olga doesn't sell to as many investors as me and Jason do, but she is the investor that me and Jason sell to, and she
Yeah.
uses all those tools for her own portfolio. She's got a multi-million-dollar portfolio, and for sure her portfolio is bigger and more valuable because of her working here.
Right.
Me and Jason use those tools for help building our portfolio. Plus, we sell that to the investors, so it's like important.
Yeah.
But it can be really annoying that everyone here seems semi-distracted, going to investor meetings,
Oh.
evaluating deals. Maybe they buy it themselves, or maybe they pawn off to one of their, But in a high-rate market, it's how we don't get rate shopped.
Right.
It's actually a strategy. If you show people how to make a bunch of money doing these investor
Yeah.
deals, why would it be so rate sensitive?
Yeah.
I find the property, I do the value add, come up with the business plan. You can even use some of my people, some of my contractors, whatever, to do the deal.
Yeah.
Just, but if you rate shop me and you ain't getting any of that shit.
Right.
Right. But I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the point though, right? It's like that, you have to justify if your product has any form of premium in it. And I think our pricing is premium price only compared to like credit unions and brokers. But I couldn't build my portfolio through the broker channels because it's too hard to use their panel of appraisers. I need to have a really tightly controlled. I don't know who's on my panel is going to get it, but I need them to be. If the property has oddities to it, they need to understand what they're doing. And a lot of, just throw it to the wind of this group of appraisers, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Plus, guidelines and product mix and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So we're built for this. We're built to sell it. We're built to do it for ourselves. And the group of those pay for the branch.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Maybe my friend will end up wanting to work here anyways because she's kind of feeling a rut in her business. But I just made it really clear that you're either all in on this, either as the investor yourself or selling that to clients, or both.
Yeah.
But if you're not, really into what we're doing here, either for yourself or for your clients, then it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
And I think that knowing who you are and being true to that, it closes doors on some opportunities. It means a lot of loan officers won't fit my branch. It gives me some upside revenue, but I get the upside of what it does for my portfolio, right? And so you just have to choose what better fits you. For me, that's a better fit because I've learned there's only so many loans I can do before I run out of capacity.
Right.
And my service levels aren't where I want it to be. And so I have to, this fits me.
Yeah.
Because if I can't make as much money as my friend Lizzie does doing loans because she can just stack more shit on her plate than I can make up for it on my own development deals. Right. If I make less commissions and I make a lot of money in my investment stuff and my clients are investors, my commissions might be less, but my net worth could be just growing as fast, if not faster than hers because I'm doing so many investments.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just a different, just being true to yourself.
Yep.
I think for your business model, you're just going to be true for yourself. And it could be that you just going to be better at finding people who are more sticky in that position later on. So people just want a job.
Right.
And job stability helps. But what I would say, though, is this, too. Benefits and opportunity for growth. Sometimes the growth doesn't necessarily come in the form of what people picture it being. Like, let's say positions, job titles, or whatever. Like, one of the things that I do here to help add stickiness to our positions is the natural feeling that some people might, like my loan officer assistants, might want to become their own loan officer so they can make more money. And very often making more money is associated with building wealth, planning for retirement, and they just can't get ahead without it. So we support all of our support staff and say, look, if you ever want to become a loan officer, we'll support you in it. But also, if you don't want to kill yourself working 6-7 days a week trying to make a couple $100,000 a year to $1 million a year just so you can be a millionaire, you can do these deals that we're doing, and you may not be doing the bigger ones, right. But I can guarantee every person ever worked for me as a full-time employee that they follow my lead and do the deals. They could for sure be a multi-millionaire with a 5-figure passive income in retirement just by doing exactly what we advise our clients to do. And as an employee, you get first dibs on the deal before it ever goes to the public.
Yeah.
Right? And so I got support staff here who've started building rental portfolios, and it works. You know, Burr style, they take the money, repurpose it, buy another one. It works. It really does.
Yeah.
And so if they can see that, hey, I can have a good job, make pretty good money, and build a great retirement, not having to risk it all to be a commission loan officer, it makes the job a lot more sticky for them, a lot more loyal.
Yeah.
You could,
Interesting.
You can maybe expose them to us and say, hey, if you ever thought about like how your job need to have more opportunity for building wealth, you can have strategic partnership with someone like us. We'll show them how to do value added real estate, Yeah. And then we can put them in a special pool where we give them opportunities before they go to the rest of our client base.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would mean anything to them, but it's just,
it's not, no, I'm not dismissing that, but it's hard to even this person that left, they were only here for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I feel like you got to create some foundation first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But for some people, like a year just seems like a long time. I don't know if people get antsy, or I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know.
Yeah. There's lots of what ifs, but I think all you do is you explore, look at the averages for your industry, compare it to that first. Because I think the first thing is this: don't beat yourself over a turnover rate that ends up being very normal, or maybe even better than the industry average.
Well, it's all, yeah. The other thing too is it's a small sample size, and I don't. The other thing too with the industry averages is that I don't do anything like anybody else does.
Right.
Like I don't run my business like any.
You
other
may
law
not,
firm.
but the turnover ratios still might be similar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the profile of the people coming into the job are similar. They went to school.
Well, I can see the resumes of people that come in, and that there are very few that have been at one place for a long time. I think what happens is what happens with people is, what's weird is I don't ever, for like estate planning and probate in particular, I don't really see a lot of people in the middle. I see, like, just looking at, because like I'm looking
people
at LinkedIn.
People have been in it forever, or people brand new?
Yeah, it's kind of strange. So you don't see a lot of like 5, 6, 7 year people.
It's like 10 plus years or brand new.
Yeah, or like maybe 2. Which is weird. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not seeing them.
It could be that you need to go even greener then.
Yeah.
To find the people who end up being 5, 7, 10, 15 year people.
That's the thing. Those are hard to. The other thing too is it's a very, very small sample size, right? I don't have a team of.
Do you do disc profiles?
Yes.
And what is a profile of? Because I would imagine an SC would be the person who would stay longer.
Yes, but I need
stability first, compliance second.
Yeah, but I need a little bit of that other half because they got to sell.
Yeah.
And I want them to have personality.
An SI then.
I want them to have some personality. I mean, not that those type of people don't, but they are a little less social, right? I mean, so. But yeah, I do
Embrace
that.
the S's, man.
I know. I mean, they're great, but that's.
Just don't have someone that's a negative in the I category.
Yeah.
It could be the third. It could be a SCI, but the I is still positives, because sometimes it goes on the other side where it's like they have 0 I, or it's on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Just if S is their predominant one, and they don't look like they bounce around a lot, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they had one other job they were at for 2 years. They went to the same school. They grew up in the same area. They have the signs of like stability and not moving around a lot, even though the job would be new.
I think sometimes, I think sometimes too. I guess when you're have less experience in your industry, sometimes you really don't know what you like. You know, and it may not be anything except they want to just explore something different. That could also be it too, because you don't really. you go to law school, then you get out and you take the bar exam and you get a job. But until you get the job, you actually don't have any idea what it's like to be a lawyer.
100%.
None,
100%.
none idea. Like
Yeah.
literally you have no idea. And so sometimes I think,
Welcome to being a business owner.
Yeah.
You just have all these little nuances, and you got to
Yeah.
study your metrics and your ratios, and then make sure you're within ratios, and then do improvements to get beyond better ratios. But if you can get slightly above the average in that space, you should be happy about it, even if it's not ideal for your business. If it's better than an industry average, then you have to accept it.
yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can. I mean, yes, it could be ideal. I can make it ideal. I also just need to look. I just need to look more. When I look, I find people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
that's one thing I learned when I was with my coaching, is that even if you don't need a person right now, you should always be a little bit of time go towards recruiting a bench.
Yeah.
Say, hey, because if you know that let's say you have an average of like it's not even going to be a person ratio. It's going to be a percentage. Like, you don't notice a percentage when you don't have that many staff attorneys. But when you get to 10, right, you're going to see an average turnover every 1 or 2 years. Let's say over a 2-year period, you get 1 turnover, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then that's a 5% annual ratio, right? So it's like, okay, well, a 5% chance that I'm going to have a turnover over the next, on an annual basis, I should maybe have 2 or 3 people in a bench, right?
Yeah.
And then you can be picky about how you interview and say, hey, we're doing software interviews we know that it's every 2 years we'll have an opening.
Right.
And so we're looking for someone that, isn't looking for a job necessarily, but maybe would be a good fit for us. And then we can meet and we can talk, see where you're at, see where we're at, see if you like our business model, and maybe spend 1 day a month doing that, even when you don't need that person.
Right.
And you kind of build up this bench, and then you can revisit all those people whenever there is an opening, Because that's how you start to get better people too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yep. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
So cool.
All good stuff.
All right, we're wrapping it up. Okay.
Yeah.
This is
good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. This is another episode of the Business Barbershop podcast. I am Chris.
I'm Keane.
See ya.
See you guys later.